Hey, Atlanta sports fans, welcome to another episode of Jocks and Pigskins, NFL Jocks and Pigskins. With Tom Pollen, I'm Dave Holcomb here on Atlanta Sports Unlimited channel. Got another great show for you today. We're talking a little bit more Julio Jones, some developments this week. Tom asked last week kind of where the relationship between the Falcons and Julio Jones went sour, and Tom has an answer to his own question that we're going to get to.
Yep.
And we want to make this, we try to make every week you, the listeners, the watchers, a big part of the show every week, but we want to really do that today. And we're fielding fantasy football questions, general questions heading into, training camp still, 6 weeks away. So nothing real specific, I guess. I mean, you can get as specific as you want, but I think more general questions are what we're looking for today, and we're going to try and answer them, and hopefully we get a great conversation going after discussing a little bit on Julio Jones.
Yeah, because I think people are getting a little tired of the Julio Jones thing. It's been going on for a while. But, I mean, Pro Football Talk, Mike Florio had a couple of things this week that seems to have made sense. It plugs in a lot as to what it feels like that where the split is with Julio Jones and the Falcons and kind of what's going on. And let's put the talk to bed right now. Julio Jones is more looking to be a whiner, not looking for a winner. That's pretty much it. We're talking whiner right now, and on Pro Football Talk, they're talking about Julio Jones. He's been on the trade block now, we've learned, for quite a while, even before the draft.
Yeah.
And the deal is, the thing is, and Florio's contacts seem to tell him that Julio is looking for another deal. Not necessarily, after this year is over. He thinks he's got another big deal in him. I think the Falcons felt like they were giving Julio that big deal. This is your big contract. This is, we're taking care of you now. You've given us great service. You helped us get to a Super Bowl, and this is your reward. We still expect big things out of you, and I think, because the Falcons did do a lot of trying to defer salary. They did Matt Ryan's, Deion Jones, I think they did. I think they approached Julio, tried to asked him to defer some of the salary. I think Julio just basically was thinking, we need the first salary. I expect to make more salary in another couple of years. I think they both got a different idea of what the contract was. I think Julio thought that, this is now, and I still got another deal coming in a couple of seasons. And then when the Falcons asked him to defer some salary, he's like, well, you're asking me to defer salary that, I'm going to be coming forward. I want another deal for this. I expect another deal after next year. And they're saying, Jones' deal is attractive now for teams that can trade for him. But the thing is he's got word that Jones is going to want this deal adjusted and not down to help anybody's salary cap situation.
Right.
So, to me, that's the split. That's where the split happened. And I don't think there's anything you could do with a guy now. I really don't. You're not getting a first for him anymore. I'm sorry. I've been putting that out there for a while. I figured.
So you agree with me? I said that.
Well, now I do. Because I don't think you can develop a bidding war for him anymore. I think that's out of the question. So, at some time I thought maybe you could get a bidding war. You have New England who needs a wide receiver. You have Indianapolis who needs a wide receiver. You have a couple of teams that, essentially are Super Bowl contenders or can look at themselves as Super Bowl contenders. And a receiver the caliber of Julio Jones, if he stays healthy all 16 games.
Right.
Is
17 games.
Yeah.
17 games.
Yeah, you're right. That's kidding me. 17 games.
Yeah.
If you can keep him healthy for 17 games, he's the kind of player who could put you over the top. He's the kind of player that can open up a lot of things in your passing game. But not if he's expecting another deal. The advantage was that there was an opt-out after the 2023 season where either side could opt out of the deal and you could do a new negotiation. And I think that was the attractive part of the deal is after 2023, you're getting Julio at his base salary for 3 years or for 2 years. Then you get an opt-out. The Falcons are still on the hook for the bonuses. So, you're getting a good deal. You're getting a premium wide receiver at a good deal, at a good contract deal. But, not if he expects another contract, not if he expects new paper after next season. Then the team that trades for him, he has the same problem. What are they going to do with him? Yeah.
So last week we were discussing how, Jones went on the Undisputed, I think is the name of the show.
Yes, Undisputed. Right.
Yeah, we couldn't remember that last week. With Shannon Sharp and
the show's so prominent that we just
right. Yeah. I guess I say he went on the show. He didn't really go on it. Shannon Sharp was calling him in the middle of the segment and not telling him that they were on TV. And he seemed to make it a bigger point that he wants to win. So you're now telling me that you don't believe that's the reason, that you think it's money, it's the contract.
It's money, it's the contract. If he's looking for another deal after next season, and Florio seems, based on Florio's contacts, it seems like he will be. No, it's not about winning. Actually, Mad Mike was the one who tweeted the original article link out, and that's what brought it to my attention. And Mad Mike and I both kind of came to an agreement on Twitter that, this has become an impossible situation for the Falcons all of a sudden. Julio's not going to get that next deal. He's not going to get what he thinks. He's 32 years old. And there aren't many wide receivers who get to this point. Very few. You got Larry Fitzgerald, Anquan Bolden, running back Frank Gore. You get very few players who get up to the point where Julio's going, as far as this point in their career. And
it's been a while since Larry Fitzgerald was Larry Fitzgerald. I mean, he's been in the league a long time. He's still a very productive receiver, but he's not, the number one receiver in that offense anymore. And he hasn't been for a while.
Right.
But he's 30. How old is he? He's like 38. So he's
look that up.
And he probably hasn't been, elite, one of the best in the game since he was 32. So it's been a while, and that's how old Julio Jones is right now. And I completely agree with you with his age. I was talking about that last week, why the Falcons wouldn't get a first-round pick for him, because he's 32 years old, and at this point, can we call him injury prone? I mean, he's at least had injury problems the last season, and the season before he played through it and played very well, but he didn't play through it last year, and he wasn't
played through anything last year. It was like, once he got injured, that was it. He was on the sidelines. He didn't play the last month of the season. I don't think the last 5 weeks of the season he didn't play.
Yeah.
So, going to be 30. Played 9 games last year, 15 in 2019.
Yeah, he played. From what I remember, I mean, he was banged up in 2019 and pretty much played through it all but one game, and was still very productive, still one of the best receivers in the game. But he's getting a little bit older. It takes longer to heal. So I don't know if he'll be able to play through those nagging injuries he's been able to play through in the past. He wasn't able to do it last year.
Right. And we have that wild card again coming up this year, the 17th game.
Yeah.
Which it's going to make a difference. I don't know how many people agree with me, and I would love to see some comments and see what some people have to say. If you agree that, this 17th game is something to worry about. Julio hasn't made it to game 16 or through all 16 games, only 4 times in 10 seasons. So, that's not very impressive. Now, he's done impressive work on the field when he has been on the field. I mean, sometimes he played 15 games a couple of times, 14 games one time, so it's not too bad.
Right.
But
we'd have to double check. Were there any seasons that the Falcons were resting their players in the final week?
Well, that's true too. That's true too. You don't know.
Fortunately, it's been a while since the Falcons were in the playoffs, so we're in that situation. But I believe in 2017 they had to win the final week to get in, so they were not resting him that year. But 2016, when they went to the Super Bowl, did they lock up the division maybe? And
I think they did. I believe they did it that way. Most teams do that now. 2016, did they lock up the division? They had the division locked up easily. So I would say, without actually going in and checking games played, I would say the Falcons probably did. Do that.
But that's only one season, though.
Right.
The other seasons, he's missing games.
Yeah, he is. Now, the problem is no team is going to go into this situation with the idea of giving him a new contract. And, he's already the second highest paid wide receiver in the NFL, according to yearly average. That's not taking bonuses into account, but yearly average, he's second to DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah. And I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but again, he's 32. He's not in a position where he should be that highly paid on an average annual basis. He's being paid by a team that has really appreciated his services, perhaps the best player in franchise history, and he wanted a new deal, so they gave him one, even though it would put them in a precarious situation salary cap wise. They still did that to make him feel good, to do right by him. And but for anybody else, that no one else is going to feel that way. Everyone else is going to look at it as, he's not being paid what he's worth at this point in his career.
Right. What have you done for me lately? And what can you do for me next season?
Right.
And that's the problem. You don't know, because this hamstring injury is that the sign that maybe he is becoming more injury prone, that he's going to have more problems making it through a full season.
Yeah.
Can he carry your wide receiver core through a full season? With what he's getting paid, that's kind of what you're expecting him to do.
Right. Yeah. You're expecting him to score touchdowns too, which I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. That's been a conversation. Why isn't Julio Jones scoring more touchdowns? And there's a lot of factors to that. But that's another thing that you're expecting. For that amount of money, you're expecting Julio Jones to score a lot.
Yes, you are. So, and it's possible he does score better with it's hard to say, because if you can't collect touchdown passes with Matt Ryan, that's
I guess we got to hit upon it a little bit since I brought it up, but I think the problem has been overblown. There's been times in his career he goes without touchdowns for 8-9 games, which someone for his caliber shouldn't have that kind of drought. But then he's had runs of scoring touchdown every single week for 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks in a row at times in his career too. So he seems to score in bunches. Maybe that's true for everybody. I'd have to do like an analysis of that. If if you're a wide receiver or running back, how often are your touchdowns spread out? If you score 8 times in a year, or are they coming all in one month? That would be an interesting study. But that's definitely true for Julio Jones.
During the Super Bowl year, it was a lot of Tevin Coleman and Devontae Freeman.
Yeah,
who were finishing drives.
Yeah.
They were, Coleman and the wide receiver group would get them in, and Sanu, would get them in the scoring range, and they'd finish off with their powerful running game. But that's the thing, you don't have that anymore.
Right. And I think that's one of, I was talking a few weeks ago with Scott Kennedy. He's a writer of for the Falcons at allfalcons.com. I hope right there as well. And one point that he brought up is the Falcons rely so much on Julio Jones to get down into the red zone that by the time they're down in the red zone, they're down inside the 5-yard line. I mean, he goes to the sideline because he's tired.
Right.
And that's very true. I remember the Carolina game, the Thursday night game. It was around Halloween last year. Julio Jones had like 100 yards in the first quarter, but he didn't have a touchdown. The Falcons didn't have a touchdown because he had to go to the sideline.
Yeah.
Because every single play they were giving him the ball. He was going to the sideline routinely in that first quarter. And I think he got worn out by the second quarter because they gave him like 8-9 catches in the first quarter.
And that's very possible. And that's something else you got to look at as he gets older.
It's true.
And his durability, not just durability during the season, durability during a game.
Endurance.
Yeah, endurance. Yeah. It's, how long does he have to stay on the sidelines to recover from picking up, this big yardage and it's not like it used to be where, he gets up from a 50-yard reception, goes back into the huddle. It's, it's going to the sidelines, hitting the oxygen, and and
he's done for the rest of the drive.
Yeah. But that's he it's hard to it's hard to justify what he wants, what apparently he wants, when it's come out that he wants.
Yeah.
But now you get the problem of, can the Falcons mend enough fences to keep Julio on the team maybe until the trade deadline? I mean, do you have to keep him on until the trade deadline now?
Well, we asked about that last week, and we were both, one of our fans asked about that, and we said no. And are you changing your mind? I would say it's still no.
I think a lot changed last week after that Pro Football Talk article came out because it opened my eyes to quite a bit.
Okay.
It opened my eyes. There's a lot unspoken that you can now see. As I say, as far as what Julio expected and what the Falcons thought they were buying. The Falcons, as I say, thought they were going to, Julio, you've been great. Arthur Blank, shake it. Julio, you are our guy. You're the top of the heap as far as the Atlanta Falcons are concerned. You are a Falcon for life. And I think Blank thought that, this is the ultimate contract. We might get Julio for maybe a little bit less as we move forward, but this is the ultimate contract. Julio's thinking, no, this isn't the ultimate contract. I have another contract to go. And so it's changed my mind about a few things after that came out.
Okay, that's fair, but we still have the situation a few weeks ago where he goes on live TV, and whether he knew about it or not, irrelevant, really. He said, I'm out of there. I'm gone. How do they mend those fences then with the Falcons after that happened?
I don't know. You call his bluff. You say, okay, Julio, if you want to sit, you sit. There are automatic, hey, Mad Mike,
Hey, Matt, Mike.
great to see you. And as I say, Mad Mike and I tweeted back and forth on this a couple of times. What do the Falcons do? How do you mend fences? Can you do like what the Packers might try to do is call Aaron Rodgers' bluff? Can you call Julio Jones' bluff and say, Gary, is there any team that might take a chance on Julio with all the negatives you're talking about right now? I don't think so. Not if Julio is expecting to get new paper after next season. If he expects to get an extension, expects some team to keep his salary up in the DeAndre Hopkins, territory. Right now, I think that changed. I think, the draft pick you're going to get, I think has gone. As I said, I don't think you can play the Patriots off the Colts and try and get a number one draft pick. I don't think that happens anymore. And I think it's tougher for the Falcons to get a price if a team knows they're getting one season of Julio. And then they're going to have to go through the same situation, themselves. They're going to have to deal with this again, deal the same way the Falcons have had to deal with it right now.
To answer Gary's question, I'm a little more optimistic that a team will take a chance on him, but the price has to be right for them. And
price has gone down. That's just it. You can't trade it.
That's assuming you believe the price was ever a first round pick, which I would say it wasn't. But
I'm saying I thought at the time you could get a little competition going. You had two teams who are thinking that they can improve themselves if they can improve their wide receiver group. And sometimes you can't get that. You can't play that one team off the other and get a little bit better draft pick.
Yeah.
I don't. There's no way that happens now.
I agree. I do think that. Well, we'll see. I guess we'll see. But I think somebody. I think he's going to get traded before the season starts. I guess that would be
pick goes down to a third day pick. I think you're looking 4th through 7th. And that's the best you're going to be able to get for him.
Wow. I think they can get a third. I'll return to the Antonio Brown deal. Again, it's not apples to apples, but it was that both disgruntled wide receivers, and Antonio Brown was 3 years younger. And Brown, the Steelers for Brown got a third and a fifth. I think the Falcons can look at that probably for a similar, can get something similar.
The one thing you don't have with Jones that you had with Brown is a lot of off-field issues to deal with, too.
That's true. But he's 3 years older. So
Right. But Brown had a lot of off-field issues, and it was up to a team to kind of look past those and say, okay, well, he's still a quality wide receiver.
Right.
Maybe if Julio played the month of December last year, maybe we're not having this conversation, too. Maybe this gets worked out before the draft where the Falcons would have been able to make a trade. Probably one of the issues that maybe put into a lot of teams' minds was Julio didn't play December last year. Can we count on him to play December, as he gets older? Mm-hmm. Is this going to be a problem? Is this going to be an ongoing problem, or was this just a one-time deal? We don't know.
Got a comment from William Amy. I think it might be a first-time commenter. Thanks for joining in, William. Julio Jones not getting a big contract. He will get released or traded. It's interesting that you've thrown around the word released. I've seen that on Twitter as well. I don't see Julio Jones getting released.
He's not getting released. That's a $40 million cap hit if he gets released. He is not getting released. Not happening. Even if you can defer half of that cap hit until next season, that's $20 million. That's you're not going to see that. The Falcons are not going to take that cap hit.
But we agree with you, William, that he's not getting a big contract.
No, he's not getting a big contract. That was it. And as I say, that's the split. I think Julio expected another big contract down the road. And I think Arthur Blank was thinking this is your final contract. Or, your
final big one.
Your real big one. This is the one that puts you among the elite wide receivers. And I think that's where the split happened. And this is why, Julio wants to be out of here, but he's not going anywhere and getting a new big contract. It's not happening. And that's why I think the deal's going to go down. Julio, Indy 20. Yeah, I mentioned that a couple of weeks ago. Chargers are under the cap. San Francisco's a possibility in New England. Yeah, definitely. Those are all possibilities.
Has the Vegas odds changed at all, Tom, since last week?
I haven't looked them up.
Okay.
I haven't looked at them lately, especially after this thing came out last week about as I say, Mike Florio's little piece. And Florio has, say what you will about Florio. Some people like him, some don't. He has a lot of contacts. The guy has contacts. So if he's saying Julio might be looking for a bigger deal next year, I think you could take that to the bank. That's a pretty, that would be pretty accurate. And I wouldn't discount that. And we had something up by Mad Mike just before the latest comment. But you're right. Julio Jones is not getting released. It's not going to happen.
The end of that comment of Mad Mike, he said they'll have to salvage the relationship.
Yeah, they have to. I don't know how they do it. It might just be a fact that Julio's going to start looking at the number of the dollars that he's going to get fined for being on the sidelines during a mandatory minicamp and during training camp. There are automatic NFL fines for sitting during those times, during those periods.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a fact that he's going to start looking at the money he's losing. And is he going to be willing to sit until the season starts? Right now, it's
that strategy never works. It never
does. I know.
I'm bringing up another Steeler reference, another disgruntled Steeler star on Le'Veon Bell. And did you see? I think it was this week. Le'Veon Bell came out and blamed the Jets for his decline.
Really?
Yeah.
I think it's because he sat out a full season.
I know.
You sit out a full season. It's really amazing what it can do to you as an NFL player.
Right. Yeah. That was my exact reaction to seeing that story, that headline. I was like, oh, yeah, it had nothing to do with you sitting on the couch for a year.
Right.
That had nothing to do with your decline.
But, now,
Le'Veon Bell sat out a whole season, and ruined might be too strong of a word, but he's never been as good. And he lost all that money.
Yep. Yeah, it does make a difference. And I've seen it, and I go back quite a ways. If you want to really go back to when most of our audience, before you were even a gleam in your old man's eye, the 84 Bears made it to the NFC Championship game, lost to the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah.
Todd Bell, who was a safety, big-time safety, big player, and Al Harris, defensive lineman, decided they were going to sit out for new contracts. They missed the 85 Super Bowl season. They re-signed for 86, but neither of them made an impact on the Bears like they had before that 85 season. Both of them were basically also ran players from being NFL stars to being bench fillers. Dave Dorson took over as strong safety for Bell, and uh, you know, things happen the way they happen. And I've watched year to year players decide to sit out and think that they're going to get something big, and we're going to come back next year, and I am going to be the receiver that, or I'm going to be the player that everybody saw the years before. It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
They don't come back the same.
It's very
And
true.
that was one of the issues on NFL.com. I was reading Gil Brandt. He was worried about the players who sat out last year's college football season.
Right. Yeah.
About, do they miss Tony Bright? I saw those Vegas odds that Seattle doesn't have the money, nor do they have any high draft picks to acquire number 11. No, they do not. They have no money. And I'm getting tired of seeing Tennessee listed among the bidders for Julio Jones. Tennessee is nowhere near what they need. I think they're only $5 million under the cap. They would have to do a lot of cap gymnastics just to make it. And no, Tennessee is not going to end up with Julio Jones.
Well, that's why I wanted to ask you that's why I was asking about the odds, because it just seems like this might be strictly for clicks. But I've seen Tennessee mentioned a lot. I've seen the Seattle Seahawks mentioned a lot. And that is another one that just is not – that's fantasy world. And really, there's a ESPN article about it this morning that,
right.
How can Julio Jones end up on the Seahawks? And it's just like the Seahawks would have to – they'd have to restructure so many contracts. It's never going to happen.
Starting with Russell Wilson all the way down. And that's not going to happen. Right, exactly. Same thing with Tennessee. I'm tired of seeing Tennessee listed as a suitor for Julio Jones. They can't do it. I'm wondering if Atlanta was settled trading Julio Jones for this year's draft. Maurice, I'm not quite sure what you're asking there. Dave, you?
I don't know what he means by settled. Were they settling for? They didn't want to settle for a pick this year. Is that what you're saying? Is that why he's still on the team?
I actually think that would have been better, but again, I think if you talk to Julio Jones and say, we're going to trade for you, and Julio Jones tells you that I'm going to want a new contract after 2021 for the 2022 season. No, I think Atlanta probably thought they could get more, and I think they're realizing that it's just not there. And they tried to play the bluff game. They put it out there on their website that they had a first-round pick on the table. They don't have a first-round pick on the table. I don't think they ever did. If they did, they would have made the move before the draft. So it's unfortunate. You're going to have to wait. You're just going to have to wait. Yeah, the season draft, the one that we just had. Yeah, it's unfortunate that they didn't make a deal before this draft. I think they could have done that. They could have gotten a late pick this year. Could have gotten probably an early pick next year, and added a little bit to their depth going into mini camp and training camp this year that they don't have. So it's interesting to see. It's, as I say, it's changed quite a bit.
I said this several weeks ago, and this is why I thought that Julio Jones would not get traded. And I think this is probably why he hasn't been traded yet. Julio Jones is more valuable to the Falcons than anybody else. And it's because of this nostalgic value. It's the value that he brings to ticket sales, things of that nature to Atlanta that no one else values. Julio Jones does not bring that to the table for any other franchise. And
but he brings being a top wide receiver in the NFL to another franchise. He takes your wide receiver group up a level.
Yeah, but we were just talking about why he's not worth a first-round pick, or he's not going to get a first-round pick anymore. And I think the Falcons are looking at it as we have to get a first-round pick for the best player in franchise history. and that's why the trade hasn't been done yet, because no one's offered a first-round pick.
Now, that might be a reason for why the trade didn't happen before the draft.
Yeah.
Because they weren't able to get what they thought he was worth.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
And the situation hadn't deteriorated at that point.
Right.
So I think the Falcons felt
right. The Falcons were not in a situation where they had to trade him.
Right.
They were waiting, being patient, and hoping the market would, increase and they could create a bidding war. But that went out the window with, Florio's report, and before that, him going on TV and saying he's leaving Atlanta.
Tony Wright, yes. As a matter of fact, Dave Duerson was a perennial All-Pro. Stepped in for Todd Bell, and you never even noticed Todd Bell was missing. Duerson was, top of the heap for the Bears. He was one of their top defensive players for a long time. And, yeah, Todd Bell was never the same. And Todd Bell was considered one of the hardest hitters, one of the best safeties in the league in '84. And sat out '85, and that was it. Harris still had a few more years to play, but he wasn't at the top of his game like he was in '84. Neither came back at the top of his game. So, and the same thing with Le'Veon Bell. You saw him sit out, and he came back. He wasn't at the top of his game. He's gone from being an elite running back to being, somebody who can fill a spot for you. Like with the Chiefs last year, this is a guy who can come and get you some yards, but you're not counting on him during the game.
Yeah.
You're not counting on him.
He's not a star anymore.
No.
He was one of the best running backs in the league, and he's a backup at this point.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So
those betting odds, we have another comment here from Big Task at Hand. Big Task at Hand sounds like he's a Giants fan.
Yeah, trade Julio Jones, great New York Giants. That way he can win a ring. Yeah. And have Daniel Jones throwing the football.
Boomer the Falcon, what will you take if you only wanting draft picks for Julio Jones?
Right now, as I say, the situation has become so untenable, and there are so few teams that you can make the deal with to start with. Do the Colts say they still want to make this deal? Do the Patriots still want to make this deal? Obviously, they're not willing to bid against each other. As I say, right now, if Julio Jones, if it's true that he wants a new contract after this next season, you can get a third-day pick for him. And I think that you're going to have to be happy with that and realize that, you just had 10 years of the greatest wide receiver, arguably the greatest player in Falcons history, but, that's about it. I think right now with the way the word went out during in Florio's article, I'm thinking that the market price has gone down to a third-day pick.
Wow. Okay. Jew Talk Sports. I like this comment from him, and then maybe we'll wrap up this conversation. If Falcons keep receiving low ball offers, I think we should keep him. The only way I see Julio getting traded is if someone gets hurt on another team during training camp, then Julio value may go up. I would totally have said that, 2 or 3 weeks ago. Yeah. But again, the question is, can the relationship be mended if they continue to get low ball offers? But I completely agree with you on the last point you were making. We don't know who's going to get hurt. There's always injuries in training camp and season, and that could change a lot of teams' opinions or what they're willing to give up for Julio Jones. If a team loses their number, I know the Titans are not probably going to get Julio Jones because of the salary cap, but let's throw the salary cap out for a second. Say A.J. Brown goes down with an injury in the preseason. They're much more interested in trying to get Julio Jones than they are right now.
They are. Right. Exactly. That's the case. If Melvin Gordon goes down for the Chargers, you're looking at a lot of different scenarios, and the Chargers can actually afford it. So maybe the Chargers might want to pay. They're moving forward with a rookie quarterback and Lombardi as the new offensive coordinator. Maybe they want to, maybe if something happens, maybe they want to pick him up to help the rookie. They do have the room, but that right now, and yeah, maybe he moves up to a second-day pick if somebody gets injured.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to keep track of. It's going to be interesting to keep track of what comes out of Julio's camp now. What do we hear from Jones? Does he, he's not going to be at the voluntary workouts, but is he going to be at the mandatory workouts, or is he going to sit? We'll see. And I think that'll tell you a lot about whether this thing can be mended or not.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think so. We'll keep an eye on that, and we're probably going to be talking Julio Jones at least in part every single week until the season starts or until a deal is made.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you're right. Well, there's not much else here because there's not a lot of roster battles that we're going to be looking at going into these mandatory camps. Are we going to see, I don't see a lot of roster battles where, you're going to have two good players who are slugging it out. Hayden Hurst and Kyle Pitts are probably going to be on the field at the same time most of the time. So you're not necessarily going to have a position battle for tight end. And from what I read, Hayden Hurst is determined to make more of this season to try to play up the fact that I was a first round draft choice too at some point.
Right.
And Hayden Hurst wants to show something now that the Falcons have brought in Pitts.
Yeah.
So your production might just change to a different part of the field.
It's true. That's true. So let's transition to fantasy and talk there. As you said, there's not a whole lot else going on other than Julio Jones. I kind of feel that way about the NFL at large. Just not a whole lot of real enticing news. Are you looking at me like I'm crazy? Am I missing something?
No, I'm agreeing with you.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah, it seems. I mean, this is normal. This is the quiet time, really, in the NFL schedule between training camp and the draft. Free agency, start the offseason with free agency, the draft, and then we have this downtime. So we thought this would be a good, last 20 minutes or so of the show to field some questions, just general things, strategies, I guess we're basically talking about today. We can get to like specific names if you want. And, if we don't get any questions, I do have a question for you that maybe we can kick off our conversation with, Tom. And I'm putting you on the spot here. I know.
As always.
As always, yeah. But I guess, no, I'll go more general. I was going to ask you, my question was going to be, is Christian McCaffrey your number one pick after his injury-filled 2020 season? But I'll go more general to start. Do you like, if you have the number one pick this fall, and we know as NFL fans, the league gets more and more pass oriented every single year. But the old school traditional fantasy strategy is you take a running back. You try to get a running back wherever you pick in the first round.
Right.
Do you still follow that strategy? And if you have the number one pick, are you taking someone like Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, or are you looking at the elite wide receivers?
Last year I picked third in my fantasy league, and I was very disappointed that I couldn't get McCaffrey. I did end up with Derrick Henry and Chubb as my running back. So
it worked out for you.
Overall, I was pretty happy.
Yeah.
But a lot of that strategy always had to do with the running back. If you get an elite running back, he's going to get 100 yards, a game. He's going to get you points that way. He's going to score touchdowns because he's going to be getting the ball inside the 5-yard line.
Right.
And if you get a guy like McCaffrey who has hands, is going to play a big part in the passing game. Now you have to look at who McCaffrey's going to get passes from, which is Sam Darnold. Oh, poor Carolina fans. I'm telling you. You're going to have a fun year. But yeah, last year I would have liked McCaffrey. And, this year I would say, you got to look at is McCaffrey going to be healthy again? And that's another thing. That's another situation. Is he going to be healthy? Maybe I go Dalvin Cook because I know he's going to be a solid part of Minnesota's offense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe I'm looking at Dalvin Cook as my first round pick, but to me, I'm probably still going running back because I'm getting the best of both worlds. I'm getting a guy who's going to pick up yardage on the ground. I'm getting a guy who's going to catch some passes, get me some air yards, and I'm going to get some touchdowns. So, I'm getting one of the prime guys on the team. As bad as Gurley was last year, he's still tied for the lead on the Falcons for rushing and receiving touchdown. With Calvin Ridley with 9. So, even a running back who maybe not be in his prime right now is still going to get touchdowns. Dalvin Cook, I think, is going to get you touchdowns. So right now, I would say McCaffrey I would worry about, and I would probably be looking at Dalvin Cook as my first choice this year.
There's a couple of different ways you can look at it, and that's why it's an interesting discussion. Do you still go running back first, or do you dive into the wide receivers? But I guess the way I look at it, in ideal world, I'm not saying I always pick a running back first. The later you pick in the first round, the more likely you are to take a wide receiver because the running backs get taken.
Running backs are gone, yeah.
Right. And then your choice is, do I take the 7th best running back or do I take the first or second best wide receiver? In that case, I take the wide receiver. But the way I look at it, there are so many, because there's so much passing, there are so many wide receivers, productive wide receivers you can get in the middle rounds. And it's just how I like to build my team. I like to build it with a 1-2 punch at running back, get those 2 positions taken care of first, try to get a running back in the flex as well if you have a flex starter. I think most leagues do at this point.
Yeah, most leagues do.
And then you kind of, maybe you get a wide receiver before you fill out that flex. You get the number 1 wide receiver, then the 3rd running back. Then you kind of wait to fill out your wide receiver depth because there are so many quality guys you can get in later rounds.
When do you try and get your quarterback?
Good question. I like to wait on the quarterback for sure. There are exceptions. A couple years ago, I took Patrick Mahomes. We had a comment here.
Outstanding season. Even if Julio Jones is traded, Olamide Zaccheaus is a really, I like him, and I always have. It's funny because on NFL.com, I remember the year he was drafted.
Yeah,
and I remember Greg Zuerlein saying he probably had the worst. It was something terrible the way Zuerlein worded it, and I can't duplicate it. But the ugliest hands of any wide receiver coming out of college or something like that. And Zaccheaus, huh?
Lance Zuerlein said that?
Yeah, Lance Zuerlein, right.
It was, you said Greg Zuerlein, and I got confused there.
I know. It's okay. Names. It gets you after what. It's coming for you, Dave. You wait. You're a young guy. It's coming for you. Lance Zuerlein said, ugliest technique out of any receiver coming out, and I just thought that was hilarious. I couldn't believe that you would say that in a scouting report. and that preseason, I like what Zacchaeus was doing, and then he carried it over to the season. He made some difficult catches.
He
For a
has
guy
the
who has
longest,
ugly technique, he can make these difficult catches.
I believe he has the longest reception in Falcons history.
Could be, yeah.
He scored a 93-yard touchdown in 2019 as a rookie. He only had 3 catches that year. I got his stats here in front of me, but one of them was a 93-yard touchdown.
I mean, he's fast as hell. I mean,
Yeah.
the guy is fast as hell. I think he can catch anything you throw. You know, if you get it anywhere near those mangled hands, he could probably get his hands on it. So, you know, those ugly hands or whatever Zerline called them. I like him. I like Russell Gage. I do think the Falcons still have a talented receiving core. I like Hayden Hurst, and I think he and Pitts are going to team up and cause a lot of problems for teams this year. So even without Julio Jones, I think the Falcons can still put an effective passing game out on the field. I really do.
Yeah, I think so too. I like those 2 guys. I think I like Zacchaeus more than Gage. I just think Gage is best suited for the slot. Yeah. I think Zacchaeus has a higher upside. I think Zacchaeus could, not for certain, but could become, you know, a number 2 receiver or very good, you know, number 4. That's basically what he is right now.
But, I mean, you want somebody who's going to stretch the defense, who's going to, you know, make sure that you've got your corners and your safeties playing deep and give you more middle to work with. Zacchaeus, even if he's not getting the ball, Zacchaeus is giving you more room in your intermediate passing game to make completions. You know, he's making more space because you're not going to cover him with just a cornerback. If you put just a cornerback on him, he's going to beat you. And you got to keep a safety deep. And so the more you can do that, I think he's a great part of the passing game. I like him. I really do. And especially after that scouting report, I was rooting for him, and I've been rooting for him ever since then.
He has a fun name. That's why I like him.
Yeah, right. Well, it took me a while to get the name under. You know,
it took me a while too. Yeah.
You know, at linebacker, Aluakon, it took me a while for him too. Get the name right and to get the pronunciation right. But, you know, and Aluakon's one of the best unsung linebackers in the league. Aluakon he just tends to make plays. He's one of these guys that I like. He's not a great athlete, but he always knows where the ball is going. He understands the game so well at an instinctive level that Aluakon always knows where the ball is. And he's likely to be on your television screen no matter what the play is, no matter where the play went. At some point, you're going to see his number on your screen. And I love players like that. You know, maybe he doesn't get recognized nationally, but I think he's one of those guys that, you know, is one of the keys in the Falcons defense.
Yeah, for sure. Unsung hero or unsung player is a good way to put him. Good label to give him. Yeah. Getting back to your question, I like to wait for the quarterback. I don't want to say reached, but taken Mahomes or an really elite quarterback in the past. And it just seems like those seasons get really tough because if you have injuries at running back or wide receiver, you don't have the depth that I like to have with my teams because I took a quarterback early. I like to address, you know, wide receiver, running back a lot early, a lot. I mean, there are years where I take my first 7 picks or wide receivers and running backs.
And you're left with a lot of middle of the road quarterbacks.
You are, but you can win your fantasy league with, you know, the 8th best, 9th best quarterback. There's not as much disparity between the fantasy points scored by the 9th best quarterback as there is between, you know, the 9th best running back and the 18th best running back. I'd rather have the 9th best running back.
Okay. That's an interesting way of looking at it, and I really hadn't thought of looking at it that way. To me, in my mind, I always knew I didn't want to get my quarterback first.
Right.
But
well, let's look at. I love using Fantasy Pros as my help me make my draft board. This is the first time I'm looking at it this offseason. So they've ranked their, they rank every player. So I'm looking at the quarterback rankings. I believe this is standard. Yeah, this is standard scoring for quarterbacks. And the 8th best quarterback is Justin Herbert. I would love to get Justin Herbert. And that I would
I would live with Justin Herbert. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So you can, and then the 10th best quarterback is Tom Brady. So what would you rather have? Would you rather have, your stockpiling running backs and wide receivers, and then you get Tom Brady in like the 8th round? Or do you want to have to get, Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray in the 4th or 5th round? I'd rather have Tom Brady later.
Brady in the 8th round.
Yeah.
That works for me.
So, and there's more quality names after Tom Brady. And, there starts to be a little bit more of a drop off, but you got Matthew Stafford ranked 11th. Joe Burrow, he's coming off of an injury, but he really had some great stats prior to his injury.
Tony Wright. Wright. Very good point from Tony Wright. 2016, Matt Ryan threw touchdowns to 13 different receivers. Yeah. I can see him throwing touchdowns, passes to 10 or 11 different receivers this season. Yes, I can too, Tony. Definitely. Yes. I would look for that.
I agree, Tony. Now, speaking of Matt Ryan, he's the 14th ranked running quarterback on this list.
He's throwing touchdown passes to 10 or 11 receivers, though. He's still a quality guy to have as your quarterback.
Yeah, and look, I would much rather have Lamar Jackson than Matt Ryan. I think Matt Ryan has dropped off a little bit, but it still doesn't mean I would still rather wait. I would still rather wait for the quarterback. Take somebody like Tom Brady, Matt Ryan. Got Ryan Tannehill is in this group. Matthew Stafford. Maybe you reach for a rookie like Trevor Lawrence. I like platooning my quarterbacks too.
Oh,
you could go with Tom Brady and then draft Trevor Lawrence. You could go with a Matthew Stafford and then reach for Justin Fields. Not reach, but draft him later on in your redraft league. And then maybe
you're not reaching for Justin Fields.
Well, he's pretty far down this list. He's ranked 23rd. So we'll see how that.
Quarterback for the Bears.
I would imagine he's going to rise.
15 years, Justin Fields.
I shouldn't have brought him up. But my point with Justin Fields, you can get him later, like Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert last year went undrafted in a lot of places.
Yeah, exactly.
So learn from that and say, oh man, I missed out on Justin Herbert, and then I wasn't able to pick him up on the waiver wire. My buddy got him instead of me. Learn from that, and don't draft Justin Fields to be your starter, but draft Justin Fields late as kind of a flyer, and he's your backup, and then he might develop into a fantasy star like Justin Herbert was last year. Jalen Hurts is another possibility. He might get overdrafted based on how he played in the fantasy playoffs, but he's another guy that I would look at as maybe to try and pair with one of these other quarterbacks that I've mentioned.
I want to see what. Yeah, I wouldn't take Hurst as one of my number one, but I still want to see more from Hurst because I don't know if defensive coordinators actually caught up with him in the last couple of weeks of last season, or it was just the season coming down to an end, and there's more to see. I'm not necessarily completely sold on him yet, but yeah, as a second quarterback, if you're going to get him late, why not? He's a heck of a pickup.
I've usually I go with safe picks. I like safe players, and but sometimes you got to go bold. And last year in the playoffs, I'm going to bring up, I don't know if I want to call it a mistake, but I started Russell Wilson. I mean, that's not, I don't think it's ever a mistake to start Russell Wilson, but he was up against a tough Washington football team defense, and Jalen Hurts was available on the waiver wire. I could have picked him up. I didn't bother picking him up because I have Russell Wilson. And if I would have picked up Jalen Hurts and started him, which would have taken quite a bit of cojones, but to bench Russell Wilson for Jalen Hurts. But if I would have done that, I would have won my playoff game. I didn't win. So, I mean, sometimes you got to go bold, and I think you can go more bold with later round picks and look for guys like Hurts and Fields and maybe Trevor Lawrence later on in your draft. I like getting those kinds of quarterbacks and pair them with a veteran, as we're saying, a Matt Ryan, a Tom Brady, a Matthew Stafford, somebody like that.
Yeah, somebody who's been established who you're going to get some stats from.
Right.
Stafford's never really won a whole lot, but he'll give you stats every season.
Yeah, right. And he is in a new offense, so there's maybe a little uncertainty with him, but the ceiling isn't as high with Stafford as a Josh Allen or somebody like that, and that's why Allen is going much higher. But the floor is established. He has a high floor. Matthew Stafford has a high floor, right. And then you pair him with somebody that has a low floor but a higher ceiling, like Justin Fields.
Okay, that's a good way of putting it, and that's always been my problem, is figuring out where to take the quarterback. Yeah, because I start getting itchy and I start seeing quarterbacks going. I'm thinking, well, I got to get a good one. I got to get one of these good ones. I got to get one of these names. It really starts bugging me. And
I don't think you're alone. I think a lot of people feel that way. And of course, you have to feel out how the draft is going. I'm not saying, don't take a quarterback before the 7th round. It of course depends on your draft, but wait, you got to be patient. Be patient. And then when you don't think you're being patient enough, keep being patient. That's really what you got to do.
I like that. I like that advice. That's from the fantasy guide right there. That if you want to win your fantasy league, stick with us, because Dave is going to help me through my fantasy league this year.
Yeah, fantasy football. I love it. It's a lot of fun, and we'll be talking more about waiting on a quarterback and some other pieces of advice as we get closer to draft time.
Absolutely. When do dynasties usually draft?
My dynasty draft is late. It's like Labor Day. We usually, right before the season starts. I don't know if that's common, but I think I like doing this for my redraft league as well. You wait until the preseason is over so that you're not drafting somebody who gets injured in the first preseason game.
True. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, I thought maybe that took place a little bit earlier than your regular, than your regular fantasy league.
The rookie draft.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I bet there are leagues that do it now. I'm not sure, but I think most of them probably are doing them in August, late August, early September, because people aren't necessarily thinking about football right now, and you get a much more clear indication of who's playing and what rookies are going to make an impact right away after training camp in the preseason.
Yeah. Who do they intend to play? Who's going to see the field a lot?
Right.
You get a better feel for it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for tuning in to this show. We got a lot of comments again today. Thanks so much, everybody. Follow Tom on Twitter at TJ Pollen. Follow me at DM Holcomb. Chris Smitherman, thanks for producing our show. We'll be back next Saturday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time.
Have a great week.